morning and welcome back to World Talks. And as promised, we're going to discuss Mario Draghi's report. So Mario Draghi presented a comprehensive report on the competitiveness of the European Union, urging significant reforms and investment to maintain the region's global standing against economic powers like US and China. To discuss the report, some of its key elements as well as its validity, I am joined here this morning by Professor Paweł Wojciechowski, former Polish finance minister. Good morning, sir. Delighted to have you with us.
Good morning.
So, how do you assess the report?
Well, I think it's a very good report and very much needed at the time when the Commission is being formed. And it's, in fact, a call for action. Because inaction would mean less, as Mario Draghi, the Professor Mario Draghi said, a slow agony of European Union and increasing of the gap in technology to superpowers such as US and China.
That's right. We actually have a soundbite from Mr. Draghi, so let's take a quick listen to that.
In order to keep the economy thriving, in order to really finance the transition, we need more investment, especially in Germany. A lot of bridges are basically falling apart. A lot of schools are falling apart because for years the investment in infrastructure was neglected. And if we want to really grow together as Europe, especially cross-border, we need to take the investment in hand. And if we can organize it differently than Eurobonds, fine.
So that's just one of the comments. I wish we had a quote from Mr. Draghi, but anyhow, I guess, like you rightfully pointed out, he stressed the need for reform. But is indeed Europe lagging behind?
Yes, it is lagging behind, especially if you look at, for example, electrical vehicles. China is producing twice as much electrical vehicles than the US and Europe combined. If you look at, the R&D expenditures, the expenditures would go to, I would say, middle technologies in Europe, such as companies like Mercedes or other big companies, but not in high tech. China today invests 10 times more in those high tech transversal technologies than Europe. So because of that, of course, competitiveness is based on increase of productivity, and the productivity is based on technology that has to go from the innovation into the implementation, so into the manufacturing. So it's very important to have this transformation that would bring technologies from the smaller companies into the larger companies, from innovation to the implementation of technologies. Now, the Europe was based on the paradigm, I would say Heian paradigm, that we need to have an internal market with strong competition that would boost efficiency, but not competitiveness. Competitiveness was a new word, that you want to be competitive in the world because all the products are global. Second element was, of course, Stability and Growth Pact, which combines the elements of development, which is a stable development. And the third one, of course, a budget of 1% combined of EU budget versus, for example, 20% in the US. That would kind of make less potential for common projects at the European level, such as those big projects on trans-border projects in infrastructure, for example, energy and transport. So altogether, we are lacking of a lot of elements that was mentioned in the Draghi report.
Right, so he is advocating for increased investment, but isn't investment of this size, 800 billion euros, risky?
Well, all investments are in general risky. I think the most important question, of course, is how to back up those assets for those investments, of course. And this is a concept of mutualization of debt or common European debt, as it was first proposed by a New Generation EU plan, which was about 800 billion euro. Now we're talking about 750 billion euro, 800 billion euro per year. So that would increase the investments in the EU on the rate from around 21% to 27%. For example, Poland today has a rate of investment, last year had an investment rate around 17%. So we are very sluggish. We are at the bottom of the investment rate. Public investments are on the high level, but private investments are very low. So by inducing the public investment, we have this effect of additionality. They stimulate the new private investment. This is the idea of the New Generation EU plan. This is what's called recovery plan, and it's been financed by common taxes, such as that would come from ETS. So first, there's an issue of securities, such as debt, common debt, backed by guaranteed by European Central Bank, and then, of course, that will be paid out by European taxes on the European level. And I think this is a way to kind of go around some of the stability rules, such as Maastricht criteria, of the debt ceiling and deficit ceiling that we have in the fiscal pact and fiscal rules in the European Union.
So if I'm not mistaken, you've mentioned private companies, private investments, and I sort of wanted to talk about unicorns, because from what I gathered, about 30% of unicorns left Europe, so to speak, right? So why these companies are not staying on the continent? Is it about taxes? Is it about growth? What is leading them to leave, for instance?
This is a great question, because we need to have the unicorns. Okay? The unicorns, if you want to have a company, high-tech company, the transfer of technologies, AI and something else, you go to either Israel and then to NASDAQ and you grow the large company, or go to China, of course. So we don't have this risk market, venture capital market well developed, either in Poland and in Europe. It's dominated by, the financial industry is dominated by banks, which are okay, doing well, but you need risky capital. You know, the entrepreneurs who take risk on themselves and would get the money right away from the market, not through intermediation to the bank, but from the market, risk capital. So we need the culture for that. And the culture really does not exist to that extent that exists in the United States. You remember, Polish capital market was based on the assumption that we do privatization first, and then there was, for example, the pension funds who bought those shares, and there was a growth on supply and demand play. In the United States, the capital markets were from scratch, were developed because people needed to go directly to the market and sell their ideas, sell their innovative products, and then grow. So the biggest companies like today, like high-tech companies, are really very much in the United States. If you take AI, for example, most of the funds are being channeled to those companies, about 60% in the world, to the American companies, American-based companies, maybe 16% to China, 6% in the European Union. So we want to shift this by the proposal of Professor Mario Draghi, which is the capital union, the union of the capital markets. So this would create a common ground and common rules and regulations that would induce the appetite for risky investments, risky assets, and would bring those unicorns also to Europe. But of course, there's a long way to go. This requires some consensus, in the Commission and among the member states.
All right, and so also, of course, we've been discussing China as well as we are discussing Europe, and of course, it is the major competitor. Probably, I'm not mistaken by saying that. However, the Chinese state is doing all sorts of things in order to incentivize certain ventures in the country. For instance, they're also subsidizing, right? Like you mentioned, the electric vehicles, and sort of they're subsidizing these green initiatives, making them very competitive on a global scale, right? So now it's also a political issue, right? Sort of trying to protect one's market from being sort of overflown by Chinese products. So how to navigate that without, sort of getting into trade wars?
Yes, this is a hard call because Chinese are doing the smart way, but using some of the ways which are not acceptable in liberal economies, such as, and like-minded economies, which such as Europe and United States. United States is more deregulated and has a culture of investments, and this is a free market very much. In China, it's a little bit different because there's a on one side there's a state that controls some of the development. By a lot of other things, for example, subsidies that you mentioned, but as well there is a so-called repression of consumption. Okay, you have a high savings rate, and the model is to mercantile model to have current account surplus, to export much. So there's also the currency devaluation that happens. You know, there is an issue of some of Belt and Road Initiative was the one that supposed to be taking away some of the strategic elements of this road and belt. So China is interested in having foot in the door in all the different countries in strategic places of infrastructure. That, of course, relates both to Africa and Caribbean, but as well to Europe as well. And we have some ports being acquired by Chinese. So altogether, it's a policy driven by the states, the industrial policy, a heavy industrial policy with heavy subsidies. And of course, this is not a like-minded country like the Western world. So we want to find a solution to that and say, well, if the Americans would raise like Biden administration raise duty taxes to 100% on electrical vehicles, would it cause Europeans to have redirected exports from China to Europe? And what you have to do about it? Would Chinese retaliate? Because they always do. So there are the questions how to become more independent, but at the same time interdependent among like-minded countries, the countries that value democracy and the free market economy.
Right, and speaking of values, I have a quote here from Ursula von der Leyen, and she says that the only way to ensure our long-term competitiveness is to shift away from fossil fuels and towards a clean, competitive and circular economy. The second principle of our efforts is, but anyhow, I mean, clean energy, away from fossil fuels. Do you think that Europe perhaps holds itself to too high of a standard, perhaps trying to be both competitive but also very ethical? Is that possible?
Yes, very much so. I mean, the key components, the pillars, of course, beside innovation that we mentioned about the competitiveness through innovation and high-tech industry development, second element, of course, is the energy sector transition. So we want to, at the same time, have less dependency on fossil fuels, and we did it, you know, after the aggression of Russia on Ukraine. Whole Europe united against importing fossil fuels from Russia, and we get double dividend. First dividend is that we are less dependent, more secure. So, you know, Putin could not call the shots, you know, saying, well, we close the pipeline or gas pipe, you know, of Nord Stream 1 or 2, and leave you alone, you know. So this is the first element. Second one, we are much more. It makes economic sense because departing from fossil fuels and going into renewable makes energy cheaper. The price of energy in Europe is twice as much as the United States, and so we lower by moving to renewables and developing high-tech industry through the decarbonization. We are building the economy. At the same time, we're becoming less dependent on fossil fuels. At the end, we also trying to be very much have a better economy because we have lower energy prices, which is one of the greatest impediments, according to European companies, to development for the European companies.
And on this note, we have to conclude. Thank you, sir, so much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Much appreciated. And thank you for watching World Talks. World News coming up next. Thank you.